Welcome to Spirit Journey Collective. I'm your host, Sarah Tai. Get ready for compelling conversations with guests of all walks of life who believe they have found their purpose. Together, we will uncover unique backstories, hearing the raw experiences that led them to the work they are doing today. Let's expand our minds together with the captivating stories and inspiration that awaits. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Spirit Journey Collective. I have a really great guest today. His name is Peter Faleskini. He is a Orgon Wellness Coach, and he specifically helps people through midlife crises, which I really find super interesting and helpful. I think that's amazing. Thank you so much for being here today, Peter.
Thank you for the invitation. I'm looking forward to our conversation today.
Yeah, absolutely. I was a guest on your podcast, which I forgot to mention. He's also a fellow podcaster as well. And so I was a guest on his podcast and I really enjoyed our conversation there. And I thought, oh my gosh, I have to have you on a guest too. So from here, I first just love for you to explain what it means to be an Orgon Wellness Coach and helping people through midlife crisis. What does that look like? And what do you offer exactly?
The best description probably would be I help people avoid all the mistakes I made, because my midlife crisis started after a fourth term as a president of the board of a Swiss trust, and somehow my life started collapsing on me. And I was blaming the economy and everything, but I was severely overweight, eating too much junk food, being stressed out, working up to 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, and trying to micromanage everything, annoying everyone around me with my behavior, including myself, getting through divorce. And then suddenly started a 240 weeks journey that was full of wrong decisions, wrong anticipations, and everything. And I just said, okay, other people might not be as lucky as I am to afford 240 weeks to get their head together, especially if they have a business and a personal life, and if they don't want to get divorced and stuff like that. I said, okay, I'm gonna put together a program that will help people get things back together much faster. So, Orgon Wellness Coach. I'm a certified Jungian coach, so I know a bit about psychotherapy. I study a lot of Freud, and I'm a huge fan of William Reich. That is also why the name Orgon is in my wellness program, because I also develop psychotronic devices like Orgon Accumulator. I use orgonites, I use crystals, and many alternatives ways and many symbols can help my clients get through their midlife crisis.
That's amazing. It sounds like you've been through the worst of it, and so you're trying to help people not having to go through the long way like you did. And that's really cool. I feel like there's a saying, we teach what we most need to learn. And it's like you've been through it, so now you can help people before they have to go through it as deeply as you did. And so, and what a cool list of modalities that you work with as well when you help your clients. It sounds like you have many different tools that you use, which is really cool. So I would love to hear, I know you shared a little bit of your backstory, but I'd love to hear just maybe a little bit more detail about that. So obviously being a wellness coach was probably not something you ever considered yourself doing or planned for. And so I would just love to hear a little more about how, kind of where you started, where you were coming from, whether or not you ever saw yourself in this field or knew anything about this field, and then what it was like to transition from, go through what you went through and then transition into the work that you're doing today. If you could just expand on that a little bit more.
Yeah, I come from a well-off European family, and I was expected to be a CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company because I was a bit contrarian, and my family was still eager to get me there. I was fortunate enough to be able to pick whatever college I wanted, whatever course I wanted, and I had a lot of tutors. I could hire any tutor I want from wherever in the world, so that I could be the best in finance and project management and similar topics. I'm still certified risk manager, so I do know a bit about that. And I was really fortunate that I could explore artificial intelligence in the end of the 80s already and through the 90s and all this stuff. However, all these societal induced norms did not make me happy. I was 40 years old and my bucket list was like 100 items on there. I was miserable. Okay, I was driving a nice Mercedes and I was living in a nice neighborhood and all this stuff, but I was working on the best projects in Europe, all this, but I was still miserable and my life was not fulfilled. And I had the most beautiful girlfriend, but we had nothing in common. I did everything what was expected of me, but nobody expected of me to be happy or to live a fulfilling life. That was not in plans for me. So I rebelled against it. And part of this rebellion was a burnout because all my goals were societal induced and not my own. I'm a creator, I'm an explorer, if I may use these archetypes. And I'm a sage, I'm a magician. I'm not a ruler, really, although I was brought up to be one, but it bored me to death. So I gained a lot of weight. I was bitter, assumed a lot too many risks, and it resulted in bankruptcy and burnout. And then I first needed a couple of months to just acknowledge what was happening to me. Because I had excuse for everything I did wrong in my life. I had an excuse and I had an outside enemy that would be to blame for it. But it was all me from the beginning. And you can imagine a big ego of a CEO of a Swiss company and stuff like that. But it just prohibited me from getting to where I am today faster. That is why my, as Jung would call it, individuation journey took more than 5 years. Even if I now know, and that is why I started this, let's say, new life to help people deflate their ego, think about themselves, drop the masks, and start living a new life. And first understand their priorities, because Jung talks about 12 archetypes, and each of these archetypes has different priorities. And because I was taught to be extremely efficient, my goals were financial goals, because that's the, let's say, the simplest thing to do. However, the financials numbers cannot describe feelings and energies and well-being and influence on this, a positive influence on a society. All this stuff cannot be described with numbers. That's just impossible. And then I discovered that the goals I had were all not aligned with me. They were just society-induced goals, what was expected of me to be and how to behave and what kind of knowledges should I have and stuff like that. And it was, my life was, as I said, I was 40 years old, extremely successful in many people would believe that is a dream life, but it was a nightmare for me because my bucket list was still full. I didn't do anything in my life I wanted to do. I did everything what was expected of me, but nothing I wanted to do. So everything, my body reacted, my mind reacted, everything went in the wrong direction. So my backstory is simple. I did everything right, but I did the wrong thing. And that is so important. And I'm trying to spread the message now. And I talk about it as passionate as possible because, as I said, I'm the prototype of everything that goes wrong in this society. Okay, I didn't do drugs, but I did a lot of fast food. I did not live a healthy life. Everything was perfect, but not perfect for me, for someone else. So that is my backstory. I made all the mistakes, and I was fortunate enough a lot of support from my family and friends that I was able to overcome this, and that was conscious enough to understand what I did wrong, and that I also persevered the 5 years of a lot of psychotherapies, hypnosis, fasting, meditation, uh, all this stuff that I went through. And some things were beneficial, and some things were just delaying what should happen and cleaning the way. And some devices help you, some devices make you feel worse. Some techniques are useful, others are not good. And now I understand that. And I also understand that there's no one fits all solution as far as mental health or mental wellness is concerned. And there's also no one fits all solution as far as physical health and wellness is concerned, because we are different and we have to acknowledge it. And what I'm putting together is tools that everyone or all of my clients and also people that are following me on my social media can help themselves, can judge things around them in a way that will be beneficial for them. And that starts looking at everything that happens to them, not just as good or bad, but where does this fit in my individuation journey?
That is truly an amazing backstory. I know that you refer to it as simple, and maybe just on paper it's simple, and it's not unique either, because I know many of the people I interview had a very similar backstory. As far as, I lived a corporate life, I checked all the boxes, I did what I was told to do, I was supposed to be happy, but I was everything but happy, even though everything looked perfect on paper. So I mean, I can see what you mean by simple. I can see what you mean by, it's not unique. There's many people who are literally going through these midlife crises as well, that you experience and have come through. But what I find amazing about your story is that you did something with it, because I think just like you, as in you learned from it. I mean, it sounds like you, right afterwards, you didn't make the greatest decisions, and you had to work through that, but you worked through it. That's the thing that I find amazing, because there are many people who hit midlife crises and they don't do that inner work. They don't ask those questions, they don't dive deep, they don't look for outside modalities, and they sleepwalk continuously the wrong direction. And so I love the fact that even though it was a really difficult journey for you at first, you were able to start being open to other things. And what you're speaking to as far as society goes, and how you were basically, how you said you were doing everything right but wrong for you, like you're doing everything that society was like, this is what you need to do, and then you realize, but it doesn't feel right to me. And you were conscious enough to, maybe not at first, but you were able to come to the conscious realization of, oh, maybe there's more than what I was told. And so I just love that you were open enough to do that. And it also, I feel like, I don't know if it's the same in other countries, at least in America, I know that a lot of men have harder time being open to different modalities, because again, there's this stigma and stereotype. And so again, I love that you were open to that. And then I was going to ask you about your family. That was my next question. And you touched a little bit on how supportive they were, which is also a rarity, I think. But what are your family's thoughts about what you do now? Like, seeing where you were and they supported you through it, and now that they can kind of see the other side, what is your family's take on it? Like, do you still feel that support from them?
Yeah, my family is extremely supportive, and we are not, I'll say, materialistic in our core. And maybe that was also one of the reasons, because I picked the most materialistic profession there is, investment banking. And they don't care about how much money I earn or what I own. They just care that I'm happy. Because money was never a problem. And it was also not the goal why I went into this sphere of business, but it was, I wanted to be really successful. And I was always looking at where can I prove myself most. And the easiest is, okay, I'm going to make $1 billion. or now it would be like $1 trillion because the billionaires are already uh, probably they're going to be trillionaires in the next couple of years, especially with inflation. But nevertheless, that is not my goal, because deep down inside, always wanted to be explorer, to try new things, to try new approaches, to help people with that, to report on what I have discovered, to share with people. And that is kind of what I'm doing now. I'm trying to shoot one video a day. I'm trying to shoot at least one interview a day, because I need to learn from other people as well. So thank you for being guest on my podcast and sharing all the insights from your side. And that is how I finally acknowledged that my predominant archetype, according to Jung, is not the ruler, what I was told I will be someday. I'm not. I'm an explorer. I don't, and I'm a creator. So, so it's a completely different. And in my family, nobody minds. They're much more pleased that I'm well off mentally and that everything works in my favor right now. They're not too pleased with I'm talking to them about diets and giving them lectures. They're not pleased about that part. But as far as support on my life journey and to decide on different career, that's no problem.
That's amazing. I mean, it truly is, because I feel like a lot of people and this might be something that you've experienced working with other clients, but I feel like there are a lot more people who struggle with finding that family support and who are okay with what they're going through and their choices, especially when the family's like, well, no, you were supposed to be this. Why are you changing it now? And you know what I mean? So I think that that's just beautiful that you had the support through that, which no doubt probably helped speed up what you were going through to help you get where you are now, just because you knew that you weren't doing it alone completely and you had at least the support of go help yourself, and we're going to be there for you while you do that. But yeah, I really just, I love your story, and I love what you're doing with it, and how you're taking everything that you've learned and now you're trying. And then I also like how you noted the archetype difference, how there's an archetype that you thought you were supposed to be according to society, right? Because that's what success looks like. And now you're realizing, no, that's not me at all, which is probably where your unhappiness came from. You weren't able to tap into the creative side of you, the part of you that likes to explore and try new things and helping people. So I just, very self-aware, like there's a lot of self-awareness in your story, and I think that is important to remember, especially for those who are going through a midlife crisis, who may be in the midst of what's happening to me, realizing that self-awareness is literally the key to moving on to the next place, to moving forward and through and processing everything. So your story, while yeah, simple and unique, it's very special, I feel like, because not many people are able to get that self-aware with themselves and real with themselves and honest with themselves the way that it sounds like you were able to do. Throughout what you're tapping into now and what you're doing now, do you feel like you've found your purpose?
Yes, I think somehow in my subconscious, I always knew what is my purpose. And the biggest challenge was when I started chasing societal induced goals. And then the closer you come, the more the goals become, they make less sense, because you see, okay, I'm gonna have nice house, okay, I'm gonna have nice partner, and I'm gonna have a nice car, and I'm gonna go on holidays there. But I don't want to go on holidays during that season. And in Europe is I don't want to go south of France. I just want to explore, I don't know, Turkey, uh, and things like that. And then you start thinking, okay, I don't want to go and party all night. Maybe I want to see how the sun rises, 4 in the morning in somewhere that. So all this only possible when you're out of the survival mode. And our businesses right now are encouraging us to maximize our productivity, to minimalize our needs, to sacrifice, to grind. But it's just the wrong thing to do. Okay, sometimes you need to grind. Okay, I understand. There are days that you need to work 18 hours or even 20 hours. Of course, you have to travel for 48 hours or something like that. Of course, there is. But you shouldn't schedule your life on purpose like this, because that is the problem. And your life is not just about work and about social recognition. Because right now, as a coach, I get no social recognition basically, because we, the coaches, are almost on the lowest level of society, right there with the waitress and staff. And that is how people treat us. Let's be realistic. On the other hand, we can bring so much to the table. Like if you go for a meal and you have a good waiter that lightens your day, that makes your day, that he or she has a joke for you or has something that makes you smile, or they're just incredibly nice. That human touch is much more important than Rolex that you have on your left hand. And basically, the small things, or what society teaches us to be the small things, are the most important things in life. And having time to walk your dog, it's more important than being super important, because dog really appreciates you. And for almost 45 years of my life, I didn't have a dog because I was too busy. I don't have time to walk the dog in the morning. I don't have time to walk the dog in the evening. I'm traveling all the time. What would I do with the dog? Okay. My life was wrong because I really enjoy spending time with my dog. And that is so the importance, what is important is direct consequence of our archetypes. And until we find out what our archetypes are, we have probably 2 to 3 dominant archetypes. If we can find this out, and if we can decide what success is for us, then we can set different goals, and then we can live according to different rules. Of course, society doesn't like that, because our frustration is usually overspending or overindulgent in drugs or alcohol or sex or whatever like that. And that is really good for society, because then they can control us. But if our urges do not, let's say, possess us, and if we can restrain ourselves, then we can influence society. It's not that society influences us. No, I believe that's something positive, and that we can really. I'm a huge meliorist, so I believe that things might improve, and if we help each individual improve, the society as a whole will improve. And that is also part of my task, and why I'm offering so much free content, at least 2 minutes every day, so that people can start, or at least be triggered to start their journey of individualization or self-improvement, or however you want to call it. And I do believe that is beautiful, because just with a small improvement to our mind, health, optimism, we can improve so many people's life just by walking by them. And I believe that's amazing, and we should all strive towards that.
I love that. It sounds like your purpose is to live your best life, being present and being in the moment, while also helping others break societal norms and standards to find their own happiness and live their own best life.
Yeah, that would be a bit too much. I don't want people to break societal norms. I'm a bit conservative, so I do believe that classical norms like a family and stuff like that are important. I don't believe that there are classes of society, and that being a lawyer is better than being a waiter or being a plumber or something like that. I do believe that carpenters are important because they build our houses. And I don't think the mortgage brokers are more important in the process of building up a house, even if we go for a mortgage, or most of us go for a mortgage when we are building a house. But everyone has its unique value in our society. And I also, a lot of people, when they're starting their midlife crisis, they just wander away. It's not wander away. We need to stay in the society, and we need to improve it with our presence. And yes, it's a lot of work we have to do on ourselves, a lot of forgiveness, a lot of grounding, all this stuff. But when we improve ourselves, the whole society around us improves. When we are able to get out of the survival mode and start living in the moment, we can help others do the same. And you asked me if I found my purpose. I hope I did, and I'm still looking for it, because I don't believe that we as a people have the same purpose the whole life. So some of us have purpose, so the same purpose. Some of us are fortunate enough that we have, or that we believe that we have different purposes over the course of our life. And I also believe that midlife crisis is hugely undermined in our society. And because psychotherapy and medicine is so advanced now, they can dissect midlife crisis into thousands different diseases, problems, and all this stuff. But I do believe, like, if we go back to the 60s or 70s, when they started with the midlife crisis, and when it started gathering momentum, I do believe that, yes, of course, depression can be part of midlife crisis. Yes, anxiety can be part of midlife crisis. Yes, hormonal imbalances can be part of midlife crisis. Yes, I'm a believer that is a, one of, or possible part of midlife crisis for different people. We have different mix of what they would call challenges, problems, and stuff like that. But it's it's a common denominator is midlife crisis. When we grow to a certain age, we start thinking, okay, so we are halfway there, and our bucket list is still full. It's not empty. Are we happy? Are we healthy? Do we have a lot of friends? Have we seen the world? Have we created what we want? I always wanted to write a book, and I had probably 10 books in my drawer, drafts, before I published my first book, and stuff like that, because I never had time to finish that. And okay, and now I'm trying to be useful. And when we're talking about the purpose, why are we useful? Who we are useful to? For example, a lot of women is now convinced, because of society-induced norms, that if they have a great corporate career, that is much better than being a good mom. But your son or daughter can be the next president of the US. And there's a lot of work to be done before they become a man or a woman that it takes to be the president. So your role as a mom is extremely important, or your role as a dad, that you have time for your son or for your daughter after school, and so that they have someone to talk to and stuff like that. That is extremely important. So our corporate job, yeah, it's also important. Yes, you can work in a field that will bring something, but your family life is also important. So things needs to be in perspective. And another thing that is extremely important right now, and I think it's something that we must stress, is we don't need just cheerleaders in our lives. We need also accountability partners. And I believe that is true, especially for high performance people, because they're so successful. But someone needs to tell them, okay, this success is okay, it will benefit you, and this is the success that will kill you in the long run. Of course, not today, but in the long run, you might be the victim of your own success. I was, because I was flying all over the world, and The biggest problem was I didn't know where's my home. I didn't know where do I belong, what do I do. I'm everything to everyone. And is that good?
It's time to take a short break from our wonderful speaker. Are you in the need of guidance around love, career, family, life, or purpose? Embark on a spiritual journey inward with an intuitive tarot reading. Depending on what you're needing and looking for, I offer private one-on-one sessions as well as personalized email readings. It doesn't matter what the question is. A reading with me provides connection with your higher self, offering curated personal messages, or what I like to refer to as spiritual roadmaps, guiding you to the future outcome you desire. Readings are insightful and affordable. If you'd like more information or to schedule a reading with me, please see the link below.
You touched on so many things right now that I just really, really appreciate. I mean, when I was saying breaking, societal norms, I mean more like what you're saying is be happy. Don't feel like you have to jump through all these hoops, But I loved what you said about purpose. A few different things you mentioned. One was that it can evolve, right? And I 100% believe that. Yeah, you're right. Sometimes people really find their niche, and then that's where they stay. But I think many of us, it does evolve. Even if you're in the same field, I think there's even an element of, for instance, someone who is coaching might eventually become an author and do less one-on-one coaching and become a teacher. You know what I mean? It's still the same underlying purpose, but it evolves into something else. So I think it's important to know that it can shift and change as we grow and shift and change. So I really loved that you touched on that. And then I also really appreciate how you were talking about how purpose isn't just what you do, right? It's not just, your work. It's that work-life balance. It's how are your relationships? How are, like being a parent, for instance, or even just with, if you're not a parent, how are your relationships, with your friends and your family? Are you surrounded by people who you feel love and support you, where you're really connected and plugged in, or do you feel disconnected because you're so focused on your job or your success or your work? So I love that you pointed that out too. And something else you touched on, I think it was a little bit ago, you're talking about how you now have the time to walk your dog, to enjoy the sunset, to, not feel like everything is so scheduled and routine, that now you can actually have the freedom. And I think that that's also part of purpose too, being able to just be present, just be and experience what's happening right in front of you instead of always thinking about the next thing, right? And so I really love so much of what you touched on. So with the clients that you work with, what is one of the main struggles that you see repeated, more often than not with your clients? And what is advice you'd give for that, just in case any of our listeners can relate to one of those struggles?
Yeah, the most common struggle that I see and why most people come to me is because they're frustrated and they feel stuck. Even if most coaches start with motivation and cheerleading, I go and start with accountability. Okay? So you're stuck. I know that might sound a bit esoteric, but the God or the universe is sending you some kind of signal. Let's check what is this signal. What happened that you're stuck here? What led to you here? I would say that in most cases, they have exactly the same problem as I did. And that is why I'm so successful, because they're societal induced goals, and what they see as a success is not coherent with what their unconscious or even subconscious mind believes success is. And that is why you're stuck. And of course, because we are motivated to aim high and the sky is the limit and all this stuff, we end up not appreciating things. And gratitude is so important in our life that I teach my clients how to be grateful, but not grateful in a sense of good manners. Thank you for your service and stuff like that. But to feel gratitude with your body, to connect your body and mind, and to feel gratitude gratitude with both of them. And when you feel it, and when you thank for it, the universe or the God or the law of attraction will give more of what you're grateful for.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I like how you pointed out that how some coaches are cheerleaders and come from that place first. But I like how you really kind of keep it real with them. Like you don't add the fluff. And I think that could be sometimes problematic. Sometimes it works for that coach and they get, they start able to help get to that place. Sometimes we end up with something called spiritual bypassing, where we just put a Band-Aid on the things that we actually really need to ask big questions on and really dive in for. And so I think that being able to just be real and say, okay, this is the problem. Now let's get curious and figure out why it's the problem, instead of just like, oh, well, you'll get through it. It's not, that's not as helpful as actually taking someone by the hand and walking them through the hard stuff. Because you went through it without someone taking you by the hand. So you already know how difficult that journey is. So it's so much better to have someone there to kind of guide you through it. And so I think that that's beautiful. And I also love that you pointed out the gratitude piece, because when you're in gratitude, that is really a great solution for so many different things. But one of the things with being in gratitude is it helps shift you from a lack mentality to abundance mentality, because instead of thinking about what you're without and what you're missing, you're focusing on all the things you have. Even if it's as small, as simple as, I have a dog, I get to watch the sunset. It's like what you said earlier, it's flip-flop. What society might call small is actually the big and meaningful things. And gratitude really helps anchor that in, I think. And so I think that that's a beautiful way to start working through, oh my gosh, I'm burning out, I don't know how to deal with what's going on. I think gratitude is a really great anchor to start kind of just filtering out all of the things that aren't as important, and the things we thought were important, but now we're realizing weren't important to us. And I think that that's a great first step. So thank you so much for sharing that. From here, I would love to shift to what I like to call synchronicity story time. And it's one of my favorite segments. I feel like your story as a whole is kind of like a giant synchronicity, going through what you did and finding the work that you're doing now. But do you have any standalone stories that, that you can't explain, that really just kind of helped you be where you are now, or even like a paranormal story you can't explain? Do you have any fun synchronicity stories you could share?
I don't know if they're fun, but I have a ton of synchronicity stories. I'm a huge fan of synchronicities, and that is probably why the universe is sending me more and more of them. And I also learn about symbols, and then I put together synchronicities and symbol stories. So when I'm walking in forest and then the eagle flies by, or for example, I met a bear in the forest just recently, about 10 feet from me. My dog and the bear smelled each other, and the bear went his own way, and we with the dog went our own way. And it was a complete synchronicity of events. And I will say that my whole life is full of synchronicities. Okay, I lost one thing and another thing just came in. So I had to just, for example, lose my business, and then I could get my soul back. And I'm also a huge number fan. So I immediately know when I get a message on a certain time, like 11:11 or something like that. I'll say that my whole life is one big synchronicity. I don't know if that is what you're looking for. It really is like this.
Yeah. No, I 100%. I mean, I think synchronicity, especially when people tell me backstories, there's always synchronicity in backstories. And that's probably why I love backstories so much. So I 100% believe that our whole life is basically synchronicity, especially when you look back at events and you're like, oh my gosh, I would never have done this if this didn't happen, and this happened, and then this led me to this. And so I love that. And that's exactly what I'm looking for. Just stories of like, that you would not be where you are if this thing didn't intervene, and this thing is out of your control. It just kind of happened. And then you're able to experience where that took you. On a really side note, I just saw my first bear in person. And I don't know what kind of bear you saw. Mine was a black bear, which I know are not as aggressive as like grizzlies or brown bears. But that is, I can't imagine being close enough that your dog and the bear sniffed each other. Because my experience was my family and I just went up to Yosemite this last weekend or this last week. And my mom and me and my daughter were hiking. And my mom loves bears, so she was hoping to see one. I've never seen one without a barrier between me and the bear. Like in my car, I've seen one, or like at the zoo or something. But like this was the first time I saw a bear without anything, and that was I don't want to say necessarily frightening, but it was I felt very vulnerable because those things are big, and he was, he was fine. He looked at us. I saw it. Told my mom I saw it. She looked up, and then my daughter screamed, and then he ran. So it was a very short interaction, but I can't imagine being close enough that, it smelled your dog and your dog smelled it. And that's a very close encounter, but, very cool. Very cool that you got to experience that, especially after being that close to him. I think I was maybe 10 feet from the bear, and that was close enough.
The most important lesson is that the nature somehow protects us if we are on the right journey, and it somehow punishes us or penalize us, or however you want to call it, if we are on the wrong journey. So if we are on the right journey, nice things are happening to us, and the bear is nice and everything. And if we are on the wrong journey, then a bird can be really aggressive. So as far as the paranormal is concerned, I have an Orgon lab where I work on exploring paranormal things. I go around a lot of places where different paranormal activities are discovered, like pyramids, different churches, caves, stuff like that. So it's a bit of my hobby. However, I'm still brainwashed to a degree that I'm a scientist. And I always try or strive to put it in some kind of scientific perspective, what has happened. However, there's a lot of times that is just impossible. For example, how I made my first organ accumulator. It was basically, I'll say, surreal, and I could hear the author of first organ accumulator giving me advice when I was doing the wrong things. And it was really surreal, as I said. And of course, this could be a delirious because I needed to have or endure prolonged fasting in order to be able to work, to have a vibration high enough to work on psychotronic machine like this. So that might be a complete delusion in my head. However, I experience it as a paranormal activity. So disclaimer, this is also possible that you have delusions and stuff like that, especially when you have a prolonged fasting. These things might occur if you work too much and if you don't consume too much of your energy, because the energy storage are limited, especially after a couple of days. So I do believe in paranormal activities. I have met UFOs before. I have communicated with them. I help people making sense of what's paranormal and what not. And I sometimes go and help them clean the house or something like that if they're ghosts and other entities. But as I said, I have a grain of salt. I always try to get a scientific explanation. That is some kind of safe haven for me. Scientific in a meaning, different person with the same knowledge can do the same experiment as I did, or can experience the same, or can notice the same things that I did. So that is why I now work with a group that is observing paranormal activities, so that we are at least 3 or 4 of us when we go and do something, so that we have a backup opinion, because sometimes you just have this subjective feeling that might not be correct.
I used to be on a paranormal investigation group, gosh, like 13 years ago or so, 13, 14 years ago. And I did the same thing as you, as far as like, I go in kind of ready to debunk whatever was coming up because I wanted to disprove before I believed in it. And so I had that very analytical mind as well. But just like you, I also experienced things that I could not explain and I could not, be analytical about. But I can't imagine being able to go and do paranormal experiences in Europe because, I mean, buildings there are so old. I mean, compared to the US, we don't have old buildings like that here. So there's got to be so much history and energy. I would love to do that. Pyramids and things. That's amazing that you have that opportunity to do that. But I like how you do it from like an analytical mind and still trying to be, open, but also not delirious, right? And kind of back checking as you go. And yeah, that's so cool. And cool that we have that similar. I haven't done it in a long time, so that's the only difference. I think the last time I did it was in my early 20s, and then once I had my daughter, I kind of just decided to pull away because I didn't want to bring anything home with me. I've thought about going back and doing some more investigating though, but I think my whole belief system on it has completely shifted. So before it was more like I would investigate almost as a religion, as a way to prove that there was something more. And now I know there's something more. So I don't know, but that's a very cool story and very cool hobby that you have. So the final question I love to ask everybody, do you believe that we all have a purpose, like every single person?
No.
Okay.
Let me elaborate that.
Yes.
So potentially every person could have a purpose. However, I don't believe that every person has a purpose, and I don't believe that every person can discover their purpose, especially if they're really strongly programmed by society. We talked about society-induced goals. If they refuse to study their archetypes, their mission, then it's really hard to discover. As Jung would estimate, about 20% of the people is able to go on the journey of individuation, and only these 20% have, let's say, scientific chance of discovering purpose. And I would like to stress that there are also others that just discovered that they just live in accordance with their purpose. And I was amazed, and that was also really frustrating for me when I believed that my purpose was what society wanted from me. But I saw so many people that were doing simple jobs, or what we call simple jobs. They are not, but like a good waiter, that is something amazing. But you just have to transfer your energy somehow to the people that you're serving. But it's so simple, as a society would say. Yeah, you don't need special education for that. You don't need college degree, blah, blah, blah. But it's so hard to be a good waiter. There is so many average waiters out there, but only a few good ones. And I do believe that the good ones are the ones that believe that there's part of their mission. Maybe they don't want to do it long time, but there's a part of their mission, and they have discovered their purpose and said, okay, in this moment, my purpose is to serve people. And I do believe that, disclaimer, I used to be asshole for most of my life, but it's important to be nice. And whenever it's possible, and it's almost always possible to be nice. And I believe this is so underrated ability that we all have and not utilized enough, because we are taught you have to be tough, you have to stand for yourself and all this. Yes, that is correct. But usually you can stand for yourself and still be nice.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I can agree with everything you shared. So what I like to say purpose is something that lights you up, right? That you find joy in, that really just, is very fulfilling, but it also gives back to the world in some way. So like in your example of having a good waiter, they obviously love what they're doing. You know what I mean? There's a love there that allows them to show up the way that they're showing up. And then that in turn impacts the people they're waiting for in a positive way, because it's like their own joy is transmuting around them to other people. And so I love that you touched on that. And so I definitely agree with that 100%, that like it doesn't have to be anything big. It really doesn't. It could be something, honestly, I've even heard this before. Opening the door for someone, taking the time to just be kind and open the door for someone can make their day. They could be having a horrible day, and that one act of kindness can completely turn their day around. So I do also believe that that is a part of purpose as well, is how are you showing up and impacting people, even if it's in the smallest of ways. It's not small to them, right? And what I also want to speak to as well, that I also believe that there are people who won't find their purpose in this lifetime because they're sleepwalking. I like to believe that everyone has the potential, and I think that whether or not they find it is free will, right? Whether or not they decide to seek and ask those questions. But I do think there are a lot of people who, like you said, are so programmed by society, they don't even know where to begin looking. They don't even know there's something to look for. And so they don't. And so that's always kind of heartbreaking for me when I think about that, which is why I love like podcasts like what you have, or what I'm doing here. We're putting it out there for those that may not even know that there's something to look for. And maybe, just maybe, someone who may not have found it finds it. So yeah, I love both of the things you shared about that. So if our listeners want to work with you, and they're going through a midlife crisis and they're really needing that guidance, how can they find you?
We have a special website where they can get a free ascension audit, where we check if we are a fit. As I said, I'm not so much as a cheerleader as an accountability partner. And someone needs accountability partner more, and someone needs a cheerleader more. So we have a first session free for whoever goes into our website. Is call at orgonwellness.com. I'm gonna send you the link, and they can have the first session free, so that we talk on the first session about the goals. Are these society-induced goals? Are they their own goals? Because usually people, they feel stuck. Then they have the slightest, they have the hunch, let's say like that, about what's going on. And with a couple of questions and other techniques, we get there. And on the first session, they will be pretty sure that if their goals are genuine or not. And of course, even if they like to work with me or not, I would like to stress, find a good coach, because there are so many good coaches around. Your coach needs to be the fit. Of course, coaching relationship is much, much shorter than the marriage, but it's usually equally important, because it will change your life. And a good marriage changes your life for the better, and bad marriage changes your life for the worse. So it's same with the coach. If you have a good coach, your life might improve drastically. As I said, with our retreats, we do in 8 days what I needed 240 weeks to do. With the typical coaching session with me, we do in 6 weeks what I needed 240 weeks to do. And that is the benefit of the coach. Of course, you can read everything on your own, maybe buy a book and do it on your own. But with a good coach, you'll see that there's a difference in details, and you will be able to go through things, discover your traumas, discover where you hold grudges, discover where you have fear in no time. And that will speed up the process incredibly.
Perfect. And I'll be sure to put that in the show notes so they can find it and connect with you easier. And thank you so much for joining me today. When we chatted on your podcast, I had this feeling like you'd be a really great guest. I was really interested in, your backstory. I already kind of had a feeling it was going to be a really good one, and I was just blown away by it even more than I expected to be. So I think that a lot of the wisdom you shared, many of our listeners can actually relate to and understand where you're coming from and why you had to go on this journey, and then what you're getting from it now. So I'm so appreciative that you decided to join my podcast, be a guest, and share your story.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for joining me on another inspiring episode. Remember, your purpose is a unique and unfolding path. I hope these conversations have ignited a spark within you. Until next time, keep exploring, growing, and embracing the beautiful adventure of connecting with your purpose. Stay tuned for more meaningful conversations. If you enjoyed the episode today, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And thank you for joining me on this journey.